Welcome! Friday session. It's the last session of the week. I hope you're all ready for the weekend and all excited. We're going to be starting in about a couple of minutes. But as usual, I'll give a few shout outs to those of you that are already here in the Zoom. If you're here on either YouTube Live or the Facebook group, just type something into the chat box. Let me know who you are. So we have William here from Ireland. Hi, William. Good to see you again. I think you've been here most days this week, as has Roy Gillard. In fact, Roy, you might have been to possibly all 5 sessions. I've had 5 sessions this week, and Roy, I've seen you a lot, which is awesome. Tammy's here from Peachland in Canada. Rochelle's here from Sacramento. So Rochelle's been to most of the sessions as well, I believe. If anyone's been to 5 sessions, let me know in the chat box. I'd be curious to know. Or even 4 would be really cool. We have Manuel's here from Glendale. We have Beverly's here from Abbotsford in British Columbia. We have Lisa DeHaas is here from West Sussex. You've probably been to most of the sessions this week, Lisa, I think. Nina's here. Hi, Nina. Hope you're well. Just so you know, Nina, you asked a question about overwhelm, and I'm planning in about a week and a half's time, 10 days, doing a live session on that. Watch this space, Nina, and I'll announce that live session on how to deal with overwhelm. What else have we got? I've lost track. Mike's here from Cornwall. Hi there, Mike. Hope you're well. We've got Lynn James is here from Canada. Sarina, is that right? From Manchester in the UK. I'm not sure that I know you so well, so welcome to the session. We are going to start any second now. I've got about 30 more comments in the chat box, so I'm not going to get through all those. I have a question from Nancy, which I'll get onto a second, but it is on the hour, so let's get started. Having said that, Lisa has attended all the sessions this week that she's been invited to. Rochelle's been to 4 sessions, and Raji's been to 5. Oh, wow, Raji's been to 5 sessions this week. That's amazing. Rennie's been to 4. Roy Gillard's been to all 5. Okay, so some of you are amazing. Keep showing up, which is really cool. So today we have 60 minutes. I'm going to be answering your questions about the software. We have a theme for the day, so I'm going to show you some stuff to get us started very, very soon. I'm also going to be asking for some contributions in the chat box. Jamal's been to all 5 sessions this week as well. Randall 4, Tammy 4. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, it's been my mentoring week for those people in the Value Pricing Academy and the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy. We run sessions Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, deep training sessions, and so many people have been to 4 or 5 of those. What do I need to tell you? If you're in the Zoom, you kind of know that if you've got any questions for me, stick them in the Q&A box, not the chat box. Chat for general comments, and set the chat box to all panelists and attendees so other people see your comments, and use the Q&A box for questions from me. If you are live on social media, ask your questions in the comments box there, but please click that link if you're on Facebook just so I know who you are. Then I can give you a shout out. Generally, I'll let you off, Nancy, because you beat me to it, but if you are asking questions, try to keep the questions short to 1 or 2 sentences, 2 or 3 lines, because really long questions get really hard to answer. And usually we have more questions than I can answer in 60 minutes. So I sometimes prioritize the ones that look easy so I can get as many questions answered as possible. Anyway, I'll answer your question in a second, Nancy. I think that's it in terms of the admin. So our theme today is, I always have a theme. So last week, last Friday, we looked at a real starter level where we looked at how to get started with the software. So if this is your first time here and you've never used the software before, just put new into the comments, the chat. Just let me know if you are here for the first time and have not used the software, just so I know. So Sonia, is that Sonia or Sonia Ray is also? Oh, Rochelle, you haven't used the software yet. That's interesting. Ray hasn't. Sarah, Lisa hasn't. Quite okay. Lots of people. I'm looking at the Zoom chat box at the moment. Lots of people who haven't used the software yet and all been to one of these sessions. So, okay. So if you've not been to one of these sessions before, I always have a theme. And I'll show you something for 15, 20 minutes, then we open up to questions. So I have no idea where we'll go after 20 minutes, but I always have a theme. And I tend to alternate between a complete beginner session, through to a more intermediate session, which is this week, and a more advanced session just to meet, because there's different people here. Some of you have been using the software a lot and are experts with it, and some of you are brand new. So if you are brand new, if you've never used it before, last week I talked about a checklist we just created, brand new, hot off the press a week ago, was a series of getting started checklists where, last week for the first 10 to 20 minutes, I walked through these checklists. There's a series of them for how to register through to how to get started, how to do your first quote, and so on. So I'm going to recommend that you catch up with last week's session if you are brand new. It's on my YouTube channel. You can watch the recording of that. And you can also get the checklist. In fact, the checklist I will put in the chat box right now. So if you've, let me just hit that button there. I'll put some links in the chat box. And one of those is to that particular, I think, that checklist, if I've got it right. So you can download the checklist. That's great for getting started. Okay, so some of you are new. That's great, awesome. And some of you have been here before. I'm going to answer Nancy's question because it's been there for a while. Nancy's been very patient. I'll answer the question and then we'll get into the theme. And the theme for this week is I'm going to show you how to use the software to price a service. I'm going to show you what you would do in the process with a client. And we're going to look at how do you price setting up a client on a cloud accounting system such as QBO or Xero. But before we do that, Nancy, let's have a look at your question. So just bear with me a second. Nancy says, this is a general effective pricing question. I know to try to block out around 90 minutes to 2 hours for the fact-finding appointment. How much time should I plan for the pricing meeting? I want to be sure to set the expectations when we plan the meeting. Nancy, that's a really interesting question. To some extent, it depends. So when you're talking about price and having your pricing meeting, before you even open up the software and go through the software and the price, you want to build up the value first. So the communication, how you build the value up is really important. And Nancy, you know, because you're part of the academy, that I teach having pricing brochures to act as an agenda, aid memoir, to really help you and support you through that process of building up the value of what you do. Because we shouldn't talk about price until the client understands the benefit of what they're going to get. So the pricing is the very last piece. And so how long do you allow? Well, bear in mind you've got to go through and build the value up first in that meeting, Nancy. It all depends on how complex the service is. So if you're talking about having a meeting with a client to talk about perhaps what we're going to do today, how to set up a cloud accounting system, you might be able to do that, go through the brochure, the building up the value and the pricing bit in probably 45 minutes. Because it's a relatively small service, although as you'll see, you can get very high prices still. But if you're taking on a brand new client and it's bookkeeping work, or it's a complex cleanup project, or it's annual financial statements, or it's business advisory, and the more at stake, the higher the price, the higher the value of the service, you may well need an hour and a half to do the job properly. So Nancy, I hope that helps. It's difficult to give an exact, this is how long your meeting should last, because it depends upon the nature of the work. Okay, and I'll do Manuel's question as well because it's in the Q&A box. It's the last one for the moment. Manuel says, it's always hard to price correctly for a first-time client, not to go overboard or go too low. What's the best strategy? Okay, well, hopefully you'll get insight to that in the next 15, 20 minutes as I walk you through our theme for today. But before I look at the software, I'm going to actually ask, for to get a bit of feedback. So I'm going to show you in a second how you would use the software to price moving somebody to a cloud accounting system, whether that's Xero or QuickBooks Online. But I'm going to ask you, don't do it yet, just wait, but I'm going to ask you to let me know typically how much you might charge, and if it's free, that's fair enough. But I want you to imagine there's no cleanup work. So you have a client or potential client, and all their books and records are up to date. They have a fully balanced trial balance. And what you're talking to them about is the benefits of moving to the cloud, moving to something like QuickBooks Online, Xero, because they're now on perhaps a desktop system. And so you're going to offer a service whereby you would set them up on Xero, QuickBooks Online, set up the chart of accounts, and migrate and copy across the trial balance, the opening position. So my question is, stick in the comments, the chat box, typically, how much would you charge for doing that? And if that's zero, if it's free, if you don't charge, that's fine. Just put it in the chat box and we'll just get a bit of a feel for what people charge and the range of prices. And straight away, the first person was Michael McClellan, 1,000. Right, the second answer, that's $1,000. I've asked this before. Is it a shorter name of Karizuman? Is it Kyle? I forget now. You'll have to remind me. £100 anyway. Lisa, $500. Clive, $500. We've got $750. £147. Don't shoot me. $125 per hour. Deborah, I might have to shoot you actually. Roy, Roy, zero. Roy, come on. Roy, you should know better. Let's fix that one. Rajiv, zero. We have Missy 450. We have Lorraine for 500. We have Cindy Tan, zero. Ray, zero. Don's, zero. Any other ones that really stand out? So Randall Orser, anywhere between $600 and $3,600. Mike from Cornwall, $2,000. Just call me Ali. Thank you, Ali. Of course, I must remember that, Ali. Any others that stand out? Okay, no. So they're still coming through. Rennie, you're smart. You're already ahead of me on this one. So as you can see, and we have Morris is on the Facebook, is on the YouTube. He says 150. So as you can see, pricing is all over the place in our profession, from free to, in Randall's case, I think up to $3,600. That I think is Canadian dollars. So a huge range of prices. And that's what I find over and over again in our profession with charging things. What's also interesting, not in this group, because I have a lot of people here today who are part of the Value Pricing Academy or the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, but I've done this question in a lot of webinars over the years to thousands of people. And what I found is that this particular service, somewhere between, every time I run a big webinar on this, somewhere between 30 and 38% of people say they don't charge for moving somebody to QuickBooks Online or Xero. And I find that strange, but it's also one of the big problems in our profession. We give too much stuff away for free. And one of the reasons we undercharge this service or even give it away for free is because it doesn't actually take long to do. If the trial balance balances, the books and records are up to date, all we've really got to do is set up QuickBooks Online or Xero. We set up the chart of accounts, might take an hour or two, and then we can outsource the process of migrating the data, because I believe that certainly Intuit, they have a service. They'll do it for you where they'll move the data across, I think 2 years for free or something. So there's not a huge amount of time involved. But we shouldn't be pricing based on the hour. We should be pricing based on value. And the value is huge. The value is, what we're doing is when we move someone to a cloud accounting system, we're putting on the latest modern technology, which gives them access to up-to-date financial information whenever they need it. It makes it easier because some of the software is great, it makes it easy to keep the books and records up to date. It allows you to integrate with other tools that allow you to, for example, if you're on a construction site and you have labourers there, you can track their time and see using apps like T-Sheets, for example. So you can have an automated clocking in, clocking out system. You can integrate tools like Expensify to monitor employee expenses, and so many apps that plug into QuickBooks, Xero, designed to make the client's life easier, help them collect money faster, and many, many more benefits. This is highly valuable, and so we should be charging a premium price. This should be one of your most profitable services. As some of you, it is. Rennie, Randall, and a few others that are part of the Value Pricing Academy are doing this. So let's now look at how you might price that. And I'm going to dive into effective pricing. I'm going to do a little demo for about 5-10 minutes, and then we'll get on to questions. So as you think of questions, stick them in the Q&A box if you're on Zoom, stick them into the comments box if you're on social. Okay, so I'm going to flick across right now. I'm into the software. And so for the benefits of those who are completely new to this, the effective pricing enables you to price anything that you want. And I've pre-written some models for you. The models available to you depend on what plan you go for. But if you go for the Pro plan, in fact, I think perhaps all the plans have cloud setup. So let's just imagine On the left-hand side, you can see I've got lots of pricing models set up. You can price anything that's pretty much anything. So I'm going to look at a cloud setup system. So the process is this, and as Nancy asked the question earlier, before you actually open up your laptop in front of the client, you want to build up the value. So you may have a brochure, you may talk about your different packages of bronze, silver, gold. You would build up the value and explain the benefits of a cloud accounting system. And then when you've done that, you then dive into, so once you get to the stage, you're almost getting close to the end of the meeting, now it's the pricing part of the conversation. And let's imagine I have a client called Mary, she's been on a Sage desktop system, and she really needs to move her system across to a cloud system. So she runs a business, a limited company, so I've just set up some details. And now what we do is we ask some questions, and we want to ask two types of questions. In fact, let me just put this on just so you can see me. I'll probably just stick it down here. So you want to ask two types of questions. You want to ask scope questions for the scope of the work. Now, the good news is that there's not a lot of scope of work with cloud setup. It's quite simple to do compared with, say, cleanup projects and bookkeeping and other much more complex services. But nevertheless, there are some scope questions we should ask. And we also want to ask some preference questions to find out what sort of things they value and choices. So the scope questions in this case might be, perhaps the biggest question might be, what system are you wanting to move to? So if you're, for example, a QBO Pro advisor, it's going to be much, much easier for you if they want to move to QuickBooks. But if they want to move to Sage and you've never used Sage before, then that might be more challenging. It may even be that you don't even ask the question, you don't give them a choice. They have to move to your preferred system, and that's great. But what we can do is if they want to move to a different system that we don't like as much, we can charge a higher price. We just reflect it in the calculations behind the scenes. So let's imagine that Mary here wants to move to QuickBooks Online. An even more important question, though, is what system has Mary got right now? Because if Mary's on a system like Sage Desktop or an alternative or another cloud accounting system, then it's not too difficult because there will be a chart of accounts, a trial balance that could be transferred across. But if Mary was on, let's say, a spreadsheet, or even worse, a manual set of books and records, then it's going to take you more time because you're going to have to manually key in or transfer the data across into, in this case, QuickBooks Online. But I'm going to assume that Mary's on a Sage Desktop system right now. So I've set up this model so that depending on the system that she's moving from, that'll impact on the price. It'll be a higher price if she's moving from manual and a lower price if she's moving from, for example, a Sage Desktop system. Now, the next question I've got here is your accounting system up to date, yes or no? I've set this up so it doesn't actually impact on the price at all, but it's an important question to ask for this reason. The reason why you want to ask the question, are you up to date, is because if you are moving a client to QuickBooks or Xero and their trial balances, the books and records are up to date, it's relatively easy, as we said. But what if their books and records are a mess? What if they're 3 months out of date? What if their bank account doesn't reconcile? Well, my strong suggestion is if they're not up to date with their books and records, that's a separate project. It's called cleanup work. And I would always price cleanup work separate to cloud accounting setup. Okay, the client has to have the work, it has to be cleaned up first. And what I would then do is go into and start talking about my cleanup service. Okay, so that's the reason for that particular question, to make sure you've asked that of the client. If the client says, no, I'm actually behind, I would then say, well, I can carry on giving you a price, but we must clean the work up first. That's a separate project. Okay, so there's some scope questions. Now, some other question we might want to ask is how many bank accounts do you have? Because obviously because that affects if you're transferring the bank details, perhaps you're going to be setting up bank feeds, for example. You also might want to ask, let's say they've got 2 bank accounts, let's say they've got 10 employees, because you'll want to set up the employees on the system, in this case, QuickBooks Online. Then we ask some preference questions, and these are really important because this is where we start to uncover what clients value. And those of you that are completely new to this process, and somebody said earlier, I think it was Manuel said, I find it hard to know how to price, whether I've gone too high or too low. This is how you hone in on the right price. So what we do is we give the clients choices, preferences, and these might be things like, would you like us to set up bank feeds for you? So let's just imagine that Mary's doing her own bookkeeping. So if you're a bookkeeper, you'll probably do the bookkeeping yourself going forward. But let's imagine you're a CPA accountant. Mary's going to do her own books. And so she might say, what does that mean? Well, if we set up the bank feeds for you, Mary, that means that data will be automatically pulled in. It'll save you so much time when it comes to doing your bookkeeping. Oh, that sounds awesome. Yes, please, can you set that up? Yes, I can do that. Do you want us to set up your employee records? And then we'd explain the benefit, and the client will probably say yes. Do you want us to set up your products in the chart in the system? And do you want our Feedy fast track service where we'll guarantee to get this set up in the next 7 days? Yes, please, I'll have those. So what's happening is when the client says yes to these things, they're telling you they value these things. They value speed, they value setting up the bank feeds, and so on. But of course, what's also happening is behind the scenes, the price is going up because they're effectively putting things into their virtual shopping basket, these extra things. So they are preference questions and they're really powerful. So once we've done that, we've asked our scope questions, we've asked our preference questions. Now what we can do is reveal and talk about our different packages, our bronze, silver, gold, if you like, but I've called them essential, full, and premium. And we can see through a series of ticks and crosses, you can explain to the client what they get with each package. Now, ideally, what you've done is you've got this set out in a brochure, and what you should do is go through your bronze, silver, gold before you open up the software. But this is so let's assume that I did that, and Mary says she really wants the middle option. She wants the full setup. That's the combination of things that's right for her. She wants the full setup. Okay, so Mary wants the full setup. Now what I can do is I can reveal the price for the first time. And in this case, I've got the prices set up. It says, if you want the premium service, it's 6 payments of 765. If you want the full, it's 3 payments of 1097. If you want the essential, it's 1690. Mary wants the middle one. It's 3 payments of 1097. Now, many of you will be thinking, wow, that's over 3 grand. There's no way I can charge that. Well, Randall has. He said so in the chat box. He gets anywhere from 600 to 3,600. So Rennie gets his premiums 1,854. Here's a thing for those of you that are not familiar with value pricing or this approach. When you reveal the price, in this case 3 payments of 1,097, there's only one of 2 things that can happen. The client says yes or no. It's as simple as that. If they say yes, you've made a sale. So there you go, 3 payments of 1097. You're probably really happy that you've got a great result there. But it may well be that it's too high. And that's fine because, as Manuel was saying, I don't know whether I'm going too high or too low. Here's the really important thing you want to do when you're pricing. If you ever give a price to somebody and they say yes to the first price you reveal, in the past you might have celebrated that and said, yeah, I'm a great salesperson, I've got that nailed, they've signed up. I want you to change your mindset. If you reveal a price and they say yes, that means you've left money on the table. They almost certainly would have paid you more money. So we want some pushback. We want them to say, that's above my budget. That's too high. Because when we go in too high, we can work with the client to change something until they say yes. So in the software, the way we do that, and there's 3 ways we can do it. But the first way that you do it, if 3 payments of 1,097 is too high, we just go back and we might change something. And I might say, Mary, the reason it's 1,097 is because you want us to set up your products. And I know you have quite a lot of products. If you want, Mary, we can set that up for you. If you want, though, we can show you what to do and you can do it yourself. What would you prefer? Oh, I think I'll do it myself. So we change that. We take it out the shopping basket and now the price is 1,007. It's gone down. But if that's still too high, we can go back and change something else. We could say to Mary, well, we'll show you how to set up your employee records. And then we reprice it. It's now, I've got it set up with 537. It was expensive to set up employee records, and it's now 3 payments of 537. That's $1,500 in total. Now, here's the important thing, if you're not familiar with this approach, is the first price that you revealed, which was, I think, 1,097, 3 payments of, that creates what's called an anchor. The client wants to buy at this point in time. The client wants to buy. It's just a price issue. And so if the price is too high, we just swap something. But that first price that we reveal, you see, the client has no idea what the price, they've never had a cloud setup done before. Nobody's ever set them up with QuickBooks Online. This is the first time. So they have no expectation or idea of what that price will be. So when you give a price of 3 lots of 1,097, that creates what's called an anchor or a reference price. And even though it's too high, they will now judge all your future prices in light of that. It's called price psychology. It's extremely powerful. So now we've got 537. It's very likely that Mary will say yes to that. She wants to buy. She was a bit disappointed at 3 payments of 1,097, but now at 537, she'll probably say yes. If she doesn't, it's not a problem. We could take away the 7-day guaranteed turnaround. We could take away the bank fees. If we take all those things out, those preference questions, we're down to 297. This is why preference questions are really important. We ask questions to see what the client values. The price goes up. 3 payments of 1,097. We know that's going to be too high. If it's not, it's great if the client says yes, but usually they'll say that's too high. But somewhere between 1,097 and 297 is a point where they're going to say yes. And what we're doing is we're just working our way down step by step until we get to the point which is as close as possible to what economists call the buyer's reservation price, or sometimes referred to more commonly as the maximum willingness to pay. Okay, let's go back to here. Of course, once you've done that, the other thing, of course, you could do is you could offer a lower price service. So I have the essential setup. So if 3 payments of 297 is outside of Mary's budget, there's a $450 option, but she gets less. But the important thing is the client gets to choose now. They can say to themselves, do I value these extra things enough to pay 3 payments of 297, or will I just go for the 450? The client's going to choose. And what's happening with this is it's now a decision for the client to say, which one do I buy? As opposed to if you give them one choice, it's shall I buy, yes or no? Now it's I want to buy, it's just which one is right for me. Okay, now there's other things that we can do with the software. If the price is still too high, you could discount through the software with what's called behavior rewards. I'll probably do a session on that sometime in the future. But let's say the client's happy with 3 payments of 297. We select that one. That's not the end of the process, because what then happens is we offer what's called the upsell. We can offer other related things. And so I've set a whole bunch of things up here. We could offer bill pay services if you're in the US, for example, or Canada. We could offer things like setting up a time tracking system. So setting up on QuickBooks Online, for example, we might then say, would you like us to set you up with a tool like T-Sheets? And so we have the upsell, the enhancement. Let's say the client decides that they would actually like to have us help with a full data transaction history conversion. 377, she can afford that. Once that's all done, once you've added in the upsell, then the final step of the process is then we can then just agree and sort out the exact payment plan, the dates of the payments and so on, because then you'll print out a proposal which will set that out. Okay, so that's how you price. How you price in front of a client with the software. I've given as an example how to price cloud setup work. And a lot of people that I work with in the Value Pricing Academy using this approach, as you've seen perhaps in the chat box if you're on Zoom, are getting big 4-figure sums. You should be getting $1,000 upwards for this service. It's that valuable. If you're giving away for free, then you need to change your approach, because other people are finding this very, very profitable. Right, I'm going to stop at that point in time and answer questions. So we have 34 minutes for questions. Anything in, I'm just checking, there's nothing on the social sites. They're all in, I've got 4 questions in the Q&A box. The first one I think I've mentioned already. Manuel says, is it Manuel? Is it Manuel, is that pronounced right? It is always hard to price correctly for a first-time client, not to go overboard or go too low. What is the best strategy? So the best strategy with not just a first-time client, but any pricing engagement is you must have the pricing conversation in front of the client. And that works that doesn't have to be face-to-face. It can be on Zoom or Microsoft Teams, but you must involve the client in the pricing process. Because as you've seen from this, you then got control of the process. The client can see how the price is building up. There's transparency. That creates credibility and trust. It means if the price is too high, which you want it to be too high to start with, you can do things with the client. You can change things. Just change the package until they say yes. If instead you go down the route that I used to do when I was in practice many years ago, the mistake I made was I'd have the meeting with the client. I was too scared to have the pricing conversation. So I'd then say, I'll send you a proposal through the mail, through the post. And I would do that and then keep my fingers crossed that they'd ring up in the next few days to say, great proposal, Mark, when do we start? And they never rang back. And the reason for that is because of the psychology of the process, that when people get a proposal through the mail or email, the first thing they look for is the price. They'll look for the price before they read anything else, and they'll make an instant decision, judgment about that number. Usually, that's more than I'm expecting, that's expensive, I'll go and talk to somebody else. Okay, so we must have the pricing conversation in front of the client. So I hope that helps with that question. Right, next one. Doreen says, if the client is not a regular client or a known quantity, wouldn't you want to do a diagnostic first? I don't completely trust any prospective client to tell me if their books are up to date. Doreen, that's a great point. And yes, so in the software, in that model I showed you, there was that question, are your books and records up to date? That's actually a question you really want to ask much earlier in the process. And that could be through a prior diagnostic process. So those of you that are in the Value Pricing Academy or the Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, I've said a few times this week that I'm working on a huge new training resource for you on how to price a brand new client and the meeting structure. And one of the things that you could do is have an initial short meeting, typically 15 minutes, online to see if you're a good fit. And that would be a process that you could do that then. Or you could have, as you say, during the diagnostic. There's different ways that you could do it. But even if you do it in one meeting, and you ask that question, are your books and records up to date? And they say yes. And then they agree the price. When you then produce the proposal or the fixed price agreement, which you then get them to sign, you want it to make it very clear this price is based on the fact that you said your books and records are up to date. And if you use the proposal system inside the software, one of the reports you'll want is an appendix that shows how they've answered the questions, which in that case, they'll have answered the question, yes. And so you want it in writing and they sign it, because if then you start the work and realize it's not as they said, it's not up to date, then you would go back to them and say, we have a problem. You said that your books and records are up to date. This is what we found. We've started looking at this and they're not up to date. And so we can transfer the data, but it'll be meaningless data. You really want to bring it up to date first. So we have two options here. Either before we start continue with this project, either you'll need to bring it up to date and reconcile the bank account, or we could do that for you if you want. If you want, we can do that. We can meet up. I can sit down. I can show you and talk about our cleanup process. So, Doreen, there's a number of ways that you could do it, but certainly you could do a diagnostic. And as you know, I think you've done my training on cleanup work, you would want to charge a fee for that diagnostic. You absolutely should charge a fee. Okay, next question. I have 7 questions now in the Q&A box, which is good. Wendy, it's a long one, Wendy, but let me see. Hi, I used the models twice this week with 2 leads despite not doing all the training yet. Big mistake. I felt so bad the costs were what I demanded as high. I changed the bookkeeping and cloud model to reflect the fact they weren't getting much income. Can we really give these prices in the middle of an economic crisis with lots of people struggling? How do I get over this feeling? Okay, Wendy, that's an interesting question, and one that a lot of people have felt over the last 12 months. That we've got a pandemic, we've got COVID, lots of businesses, lots of clients are struggling right now, and a lot of people are thinking we should reduce our prices. The problem is, as a profession generally, most of us in the profession are overworked, working crazy hard and struggling to make ends meet. Because as a profession, we've historically always priced too low. We charge much lower prices and rates than lawyers do, and there's no sense in that. For some reason, bookkeepers and accountants aren't great at pricing. And so if you further reduce your prices because of economic problems and clients struggling, then you're going to end up working harder still and struggling more. And what happens is when you are working crazy hard and struggling to make ends meet, you end up cutting corners. Not that you want to cut corners or mean to, but at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do when you're charging low prices. And yet, in times like now, in the last 12 months, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a recession, When times are tough, we have to remember a couple of things. Number one, clients need us more than ever before. In other words, we can deliver even more value. In the last 12 months, there's been huge opportunities to help clients get access to various government funding, loans, tax deferments, and whatever. There's a lot of things that we can do to help clients get through this. In other words, as a profession, we're delivering more value than ever before, and we should reflect that in our pricing. We also have to recognize as well that not all businesses are struggling. There have been some businesses, many businesses in the last 12 months, they've had their best 12 months ever. So why are we reducing our prices when we've got some clients doing really, really well? There will always be some clients that are going to go out of business when times are tough. Usually business owners that have got the wrong mindset, they're not prepared to change, do what needs to be done to be successful. This tough times, whether it's a recession, whether it's a pandemic like we've just had, they basically sort out who are the good businesses and the bad ones. It's a sorting exercise. I know that sounds harsh, but that's the reality. You have to first and foremost look after yourself. You have to make sure that you're profitable. Because if you go out of business, you can't help your clients. And that's really important. You have to be successful, because when you make more money, it creates the space, it creates the ability for you. You have more time to spend more time with those great clients and really help them get through this, and spend more time in meetings with them and whatever else it might well be to help them become more successful. So that was a great question, Wendy. Nothing to do with the software, but I thought it was a good one, that you mustn't feel guilty about charging good prices, because ultimately it's in the client's best interest for you to charge a good price and then go above and beyond and deliver a world-class service, which you can't do when you're struggling to make ends meet. Philip Sinclair says, can we modify the questions? I don't give the 7-day guarantee as an option. Absolutely. So let me just quickly show you that, Philip, and a few other people. So I'm back in the software. Let me just turn me back on as well. So, and I just need to move my Q&A box out of the way. So I've just showed you the client front end. That's what happens when you're with the client. But if you hit the cogwheel in the top, this is where you set up the software to suit you. You can have your own branding, your logo in the top left, and so many other things as well. One of the things you'll do frequently is go into this area called model management. Model management is where you manage all the pricing models. So when you first get the software, at the bottom are a whole bunch of pre-written models. How many you get depends upon which plan you go for. With the starter plan, you get a couple of bookkeeping ones, a payroll one, and I think you get cleanup and cloud setup. If you go for the Pro plan, you get all the models you can see here: personal tax returns, price consulting, forecasting, all sorts. So you decide which models you want. You click Use Model, and it clones it. And that's what the top of the list. These are all the models that I've actually cloned or created. So the one that I was showing you earlier is this one called Cloud Setup at the top of the list. So all you need to do is hit on the Edit button. I don't know if you can see my mouse. We can delete models, edit them. We can copy them and clone them and have alternative versions. So if you edit a model, then if I go forward, we now have a workflow. On the left-hand side, we can change the questions. We can change the packages. Philip, you can change absolutely everything you could think of. So if you don't like that question, so here's the questions. The last one was, do you want our 7-day fast-track service? Delete. It's gone. That question's gone, and all the pricing associated with it. If you want to change the prices, then if I go to the first question, what system do you want to move to? Edit. I'd set this up with a drop-down box, where the drop-down box, it said, do you want to move to QuickBooks Online, Xero, Sage 1, other cloud accounting systems? You can modify, you can edit that. You can whatever accounting system, whatever systems you want to offer, you could change this list. And then the numbers here are the starting points in the prices. So if they want to move to QBO, the math starts with 500 as the price, and it builds based on the questions. So you can change the questions, you can change the drop-down box values, you can change the calculations, the numbers. So that's how you can change that. And you can change pretty much everything else in the software. So if I just go to the packages for a minute, I showed those 3 columns of ticks and crosses. Everything on this list you can delete, you can add new things. For example, I've got it set up that if you were to, if they buy the premium service, I'm just going to move it around here so you can see it. I've got a full training library. In other words, what you might choose to do if you do lots of moving people to QBO or Xero, you might create some resources for people. You might have a set of systems and workbooks and training videos on how to post sales invoice in QBO, how to reconcile your bank account. You might create training resources, and then you might make those available to everybody as part of the premium pack. But if you don't have that, if you don't have that and don't want to offer that, you can just delete it. Or you might say, no, I like that. I like the idea of that, but I want to give that to people in the full package as well, the middle one. So now suddenly we have 2 ticks for training. Actually, I did training day there. No, sorry, I ticked the wrong one. Full training library. I ticked it the wrong way. Sorry, I want to include it in premium and full. So now we've got full training library here. And we might want to just move it back up to here because then we've got all our full things in that column and the premium at the very, very end. So we can move things around. We can change pretty much everything you want, Philip. Okay, hope that makes sense. If you have any more questions, Philip, let me know. John says, would you have a pre-meeting chat to find the basic parameters? That was the previous question as well, earlier question. It's up to you. A lot, it depends really what the service is, and there's different approaches you could go down. If it's a brand new client, if it's an existing client, you probably already know. If it's an existing client that's wanting to move from Sage Desktop to QuickBooks Online or Xero, you probably have a good idea. But if it's a brand new client, you've never met them before, then you probably want to have a pre-qualification process anyway, and perhaps an initial meeting, which is a fact find. You ask questions. And you might decide you want to do some form of diagnostic and do some work and charge a fee for that. So lots of different approaches, John, that you could use. Cynthia Chu says, how do you reprice a new client if you're still on the fixed pricing stage? How do you reprice a new, I'm not sure I understand that question, Cynthia. How do you reprice a new client if you're still on the fixed pricing stage? Cynthia, I'm not sure I get that. Do you mean a new client or an existing client? Because that's the question I often get. How do you reprice an existing client? But you're saying a new client, because a new client you wouldn't have priced them before. So sorry, Cynthia, not sure I get that one. You might want to just repost that in a different way. William from Ireland says, hi Mark, if I'm pricing a new client for the bookkeeping service and I want them to use QuickBooks Online, would you still recommend 2 separate prices or build it into bookkeeping package? Yeah, interesting, William. There's a number of different things you could do. So, brand new client, they want you to do their bookkeeping. They're on Sage Desktop. You're a fan of, let's say, Xero, and you want them to use Xero. So you could either price them both separate. What I would always do is price the most pressing and important thing first. I would price the bookkeeping, get that agreed, and use your bookkeeping model to price that. Price bookkeeping, and then afterwards do a separate price for cloud setup, but let them know that you will strongly recommend they move to your preferred system, let's say Xero in this case, and that you'll then give them a price for that afterwards, and then you can sort out the payment plan. But what you could do, William, is, there's a number of options here. What you could do is you could make setting somebody up on Xero as something you build into your bookkeeping model. It could be done as an enhancement, an upsell. So what you could do, for example, and you could link it to the premium option. So what you could do, and I think if William, I'm not sure if you've gone through my how to price bookkeeping training yet, but this is one of the things that I do suggest as an idea, is that in your premium most expensive bookkeeping package, you give discounts on certain selected services. So if they buy the premium bookkeeping, which makes you more money, what you might then do is say, when you buy the premium, we give you 50% off the price of our cloud setup service. You could even bundle it for free. If your premium bookkeeping is really expensive, and bear in mind that's a recurring service, then you might want to do the setup for free. So in other words, you can use the cloud setup service and either discount it or whatever to incentivize people to spend more money with you with that recurring ongoing bookkeeping. So you can get creative here. There's a number of ways you can do it, William. Hope that one helps. Wendy Carter says, Can you explain why the reward questions don't come up when creating a proposal, please? They will, Wendy, if you set that up. Let me just show you. They should do. So if I go into the settings, you can also produce proposals. And what we're going to do is probably do a Friday session in a few weeks, specifically on proposals. It won't be next week's session because I have a plan for next week. I'll tell you about in a bit. But if we go into proposal templates, Wendy, and I've got loads set up here. So just like the pricing models, you can set up different proposal templates. You can have engagement letters and so on. And so I have a fixed price agreement. So I just need to, if I go to, I've got so many here set up that I'm never quite sure which ones I've messed around and messed up completely. But let's just try this one. So a fixed price agreement, save and continue to edit it. So when you're building your proposals, then one of the things that you can build into them, and I'm going to fast forward to page, let's just go to page 3 for a minute. So what you can do, I've got an appendix, additional service and arrangements, and what we can do is we can pull in, this is a table here of, in this case, this is a table of all of the optional extras. So as I go down the left-hand side, we have something called price tables. And the price tables are the things that the software generates. So it could be the payment plan. It could be the list of ticks and crosses, the package table. It could be the questions, how they answer the questions. The enhancements is the upsell, which is this actual one here. And then there's rewards. And so I think that I have built into an appendix in the default one, I think. Is it page 4? Yes. This section says special arrangements. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. So if I just hit save and continue and get to the preview screen of this particular template, it'll come through in a second. Here we go. As I go scrolling through this and I get to page appendix 5, what this will do is special arrangements. This is effectively the behavior rewards that you were referring to, Wendy, and it'll tell you how they've answered the questions. Now, of course, so if you've opened up behavior rewards and asked, for example, would you refer to 3 business owners just like you, and they say yes, then the no here will turn to a yes. Okay, so that's where you find it. The reason it says special arrangements is because behavior rewards behavior rewards is something I teach, as you perhaps know, Wendy, which is we should never discount, we should swap something instead. And I refer to it as behavior rewards. But I wouldn't put behavior rewards in a proposal because that doesn't mean so much to the client. I think special arrangements is the phrase I've used here, but you can change it. You can change it in your proposals. Hope that's answered that one. How are we doing for time? We've got 14 minutes and now we have 11 questions. David says, are these monthly prices in your example? Yes, so David, when I showed you the price page with that example, it said essential package was, I think the essential package was $450 or something. The middle package was 3 payments of, what was it, $297, and then the other one was 6 payments of. And so that 3 payments and 6 payments are monthly payments. That can be changed. You can change it. The reason I've set it up that way is because it's using some price psychology, David, whereby when you chunk something down to a small number, it feels like a lower price. I don't want to go into the price psychology right now because there'll be lots of questions about the software itself. But other than to say, David, ultimately you can change it in the software. So if I just go back to, go back to the software here. If I go back to that particular model, and I should have showed this when Philip asked the question. If I edit my cloud setup model, and one of the sections here is called pricing parameters. This is essentially where you set up how it prices your 3 packages, your bronze, silver, gold, if you like. So I've got it set up with essential, full, premium. There's 5 columns, by the way, because you can have up to 5 packages. You don't have to have a bronze, silver, gold. You can have a bronze, silver, gold plus a super premium. And the way that I've set these up is there is a line that says period spread over. I'm not sure if you can see that. It's in the middle. I'm just highlighting it. And I've got a 6, a 3, and a 1 in those boxes. And what that means is that when you put a 1 in there, it just calculates the price and they pay that in one lump sum. That's the price, $495. But if you want to, you can have packages spread over different periods, different payment plans, and so on. If you don't like that, you just put 1s back in these boxes and all 3 columns will show the grand total price. The reason why you've got that flexibility is because there's some powerful things you can do once you understand price psychology. Okay, hope that one helped, David. We have Cindy. Let me just check. Let me answer Cindy Tan's, and then Cynthia, you did come back. So I'll come back to yours. Cindy said, "Hi Mark, how do you price diagnostic review?" Cindy, you're in the Value Pricing Academy, aren't you? I think so. I can give you a quick answer now, but I want to focus on the. I'm going to focus on the software just because that's the theme of the day. We've got 12 minutes left, Cindy. Could you copy and paste that into the Value Pricing Academy Facebook group? And I'll answer over the weekend with a bit more of an answer. But essentially, I wouldn't use the software for that, because you could do, but if you're, I guess it depends what your price diagnostic review is. But if it's if it's, for example, for a cleanup project, then a lot of people that follow my training will charge $200, $300, $400, $500 for doing a diagnostic review. One of the things with diagnostic reviews is the objective, the reason why you want to charge a fee is not to make it a profitable service. You want the real profit to be on the full project. When you do the full project, the full cleanup work and whatever, then you go into the software, you give them 3 choices and so on. The reason for charging a diagnostic fee is, the most important reason is, it's a really powerful pre-qualifier. Because if somebody's willing to pay you $500, let's say, to review their books and records for an hour or 2, then that shows that they're serious. And therefore, when you then sit down with them to go through your findings and then give them the different choices, and you open up the software and do the full project, you know they're going to be the sort of people that will be a good client, because they were willing to pay a good fee for the initial meeting. So that's my short answer, Cindy. But if you want, I can give you a longer answer via the Facebook group. Okay, let me go back to Cynthia. She said then, so by reprice, I meant if the price is too high. Got it. So Cynthia said originally, how do you reprice a new client if you are still on the fixed pricing stage? I think you meant page then. Let me read this. By reprice, I meant if the price is too high in the pricing conversation, when you use the software, you take out options. If you give a fixed fee without using the software, do you also take out things you will do to get to the price they're willing to pay? If you give a fixed fee without using the software, I'm not 100% sure, Cynthia, but I think what you... So I'm assuming here, if you're not using software for doing this, the reason why I think software is so important as part of the pricing conversation, and you don't have to use effective pricing, you could build Excel spreadsheets, but the problem with not using the software is if it's all kind of in your head and you say to the client, yes, we can do okay, you want these things, we can do the cloud setup and it's going to cost you $2,000, and the client says that's expensive, then with software there's transparency. They can see how the price is changing as you change things. Without software, you might say, oh, well, if we take that out, we could probably do it for about $1,500. Because you haven't got a structured system, when you say that in front of the client's going to think, oh, right, I can negotiate here. And so, because it feels like without something like a price list or software, the client's going to feel that you're making it up, and therefore they're going to give you more pushback and negotiate harder. I don't know if that answered your question, Cynthia, but if I hopefully did, if not, come back to me sometime. We have 8 minutes left. Jan says, if you know the prospect uses Stripe or PayPal, etc., any suggestions on how to incorporate that integration into the effective pricing process? One option, Jan, is, I don't know if you saw the webinar last week. There was a webinar last week. It's on my YouTube channel now, where David Pankovic walked through his entire system from a lead right through to the pricing process. And in the last 20 minutes, he talked about how he integrates effective pricing, how he does the proposal, and then he puts into Practice Ignition. And Practice Ignition has all that stuff about collecting money and stuff. So that's one option. You could then use effective pricing for doing the pricing and create a nice proposal, and then you could put the proposal inside Practice Ignition would be one way that you could do it. Another option is one of the next developments we're doing very soon. The developers have just spec'd it out and given me the price for it. Is we're going to have integrations with both QBO and Xero. And so I guess that if you, once you've then done the payment plan stuff, you can export it into QBO Xero, raise your invoices, and I think you then use that to collect the money and so on. So I don't know if that's answered your question, Jan. I hope it's helped. Doreen says, I might skip ahead for a few people who haven't answered questions yet, but Doreen says, I charge for the diagnostic and I always want to do that before I get involved with a new client. Where can the diagnostic conversation fit? Isn't it a conversation separate from an ongoing support conversation? Doreen, I think I'm right in saying you're in my pricing academy, aren't you? And if you are, I've got some big training coming on that soon. So given this is off topic and we've got 6 minutes left, I want to keep on the effective pricing topic for now. I will answer that, Doreen, but I think I've got something that's going to solve your issues there. Okay, let's pick some people who haven't answered questions for yet. And I've just seen some people on social. Selena's in YouTube from Washington State, but not a question. Okay. Randall says, is free better than saying included? I'm thinking included for at least the software subscription. Okay, so Randall, and you may have spotted when you're building up your packages inside the software, one of the things that you could do, and I'll show it briefly, when you set up those packages with your ticks and your crosses, you can, if I hit the edit button for, let's take, the first one says analyze and select the best option. What I could do is I could set that to tick free instead. And what the software does, as Randall knows, is it will then show the words free rather than a tick. So why? Why free rather than a tick? You've all seen the ticks and crosses. I call it the tick list technique. It's something I've taught for many years. Lots of software companies do it. There's a reason why it works. But Randall's saying, why would you use the word free instead of a tick? And the reason for that is because free is the most powerful word in marketing. And people love to feel they're getting something for free. But we should use it sparingly because there's another concept that people don't value what they get for free. So use the word free sparingly, but we can use the word free in our table of ticks and crosses to highlight something, so the client thinks they're getting a bonus. And Randall, you're absolutely right that if you're going to include, for example, a subscription to software as part of your package, using the word free positions it as a bonus and draws attention, and therefore I would suggest that's a good thing to do, and certainly test it. Okay, Missy said, let's go back to here. Missy says, I sent out a quote with 3 options to prospect via email and didn't do it in person, as you mentioned in this training. Do you have any suggestions on how I should follow up with them to engage them as a client now that I've already sent the quote? Missy, great question. It's a difficult one. Unfortunately, it's difficult to fix the past mistakes. So it may be there's not a huge amount that you could do. But what you must do is, if you've sent something, one of the problems with putting something through the mail is that you've lost control of the process. You don't know if they're going to come back to you or not. You need to follow up. And if the client's not in a position to say yes because there's some sort of issues, you might invite them back for a second meeting. And what you might want to do is, what I would then do is, if they are willing to come back for a second meeting, I would open up a cloud setup model, but I just play with it in the background so it comes up with the prices you've quoted with the options and things that you're doing, so that you can then show them that, but then you can go and change things in the meeting if the price is too high, or you could offer them the upsells as well to perhaps get an even better fee. So that's how I would do it, Missy. If you can get them to come back in, that would be great if they've not agreed already. Okay, let's move on to Selena says, I would love that checklist. So Sarah, Shalina's in the YouTube live, so I don't know if you can copy and paste that in as a comment. Actually, no, I can do it. I think I can do it. Let me try this. No, I don't know if that worked. I'm going to try. I might have messed up. I've tried to post it in there. If it doesn't work, Sarah, you can fix that. Okay, let's do some other questions. I think Rochelle's not asked one yet. Do you recommend setting up different proposal templates for new and existing clients? If you've got a reason why you want to have different proposals, yeah, I think the answer is yes. Okay, yeah, because you probably want to have different wording to it in a proposal to a prospect than you would to an existing client. There's probably some different wording. And one of the things that makes it easy, as you probably know, what I would do is I'd set up the proposal and make it beautiful with all the right pages and stuff, then just clone it rather than building a new one from scratch. Clone it and then edit it to create the client version, for example. So I think that's a good idea. I think it's a good idea to, both with proposals and with pricing templates, if you want to, you can clone them and have slightly different versions. Thinking about the cloud setup theme, if, for example, you're doing a lot of cloud setups and moving people to QBO or Xero, and let's imagine, for example, half of your clients are in a specific niche, like e-commerce businesses, and if you find that people in the e-commerce business have some slightly different scope questions or different preferences or an opportunity to plug in some other apps like Shopify or something, then what you could do is create your general cloud setup model, which is what I just showed you, and then what you could do is, if I go back to the list of models, what you can then do very, very easily is cloud setup. I can hit the clone button, and that's now created a duplicate of that, which I could do, and I could call this cloud setup for e-commerce, and then I could add some different questions, tweak it, change it, and now I have an e-commerce version of a cloud setup service with a slightly different pricing structure. Okay, but yes, you can do that for proposals as well in exactly the same way. Who was that? I think that was Rochelle, wasn't it? We're actually out of time, so I will do one more bonus question. There are so many questions. I always keep these to 60 minutes. It's a Friday, and if you're in the UK or South Africa, you're ready to go home well, you're probably at home already, but ready to have the weekend off. So I'll do one more bonus question, but also just so you know, we're doing same time and place next week, same session, same format. The theme for next week is based on a question I got from a lady called Sharon, who was wanted to do some interesting things with payment plans. So once you've agreed the price with the client, the next thing you can do, and I briefly showed it, is you can then agree with the client the payment plan, the exact payments, which you'll want to do if you want to put that in your proposal, and if you then, once we've integrated with QBO and Xero, that can then pull through later on in the year. So the payment plan is really, really important, but there's going to be instances where you're thinking, well, how do I do that if I want an advance payment, an upfront payment? What if they've gone for an optional extra in the service, and I want to just change the payment plan in some way? So next week, we're going to talk about all things payment plan for the first 15 minutes, and then, of course, answering questions. But before that, let me just answer another question. And if you are, whilst I'm picking one, I'm going to pick a short one and from the list here. If you've not yet seen the software, go onto the website. This is where you go to find out more about effective pricing. It's effectivepricing.co.uk. Sarah, perhaps you could put the links in the chat box again, just to remind people. Doreen says, actually, how would you include a one-time fee? For example, a QBO setup fee. Can you wait till next week, Doreen? Because I'm going to cover exactly that. That's going to be part of the theme of next week, Doreen. I'll answer that. I'll answer that next week in detail, show you exactly how to do it. So that will help you out there. Philip's just shared something about using a piece of software called Checkman for taking checks over the phone and print on blank check stock. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Okay, because we're over time, if If I've not answered your question, I apologise. We keep these to 60 minutes. Just come back next week, answer the question again. If you want the answer more urgent than that, then stick it in the Facebook group. If you're in my Value Pricing Academy or Bookkeepers Pricing Academy, then the best place to ask me questions is in the VPA Facebook group. If you're in my other Facebook group, Value Price with Mark Wickersham, answer the questions there and I will try to get back to you and others will answer as well. You can use the Facebook group for asking questions. Okay, have an amazing weekend and I will see you hopefully online at some point next week. Goodbye for now.